Good morning, students. Oh, now it looks like my lips are not synced with the sound, but we'll do the best we can. Okay, I'm going to talk to you today about a case that involved Troy University back when it was called Troy State College. I had to add a couple of slides this year because, well, you'll see at the end. It involved somebody who's very famous, and that person who was very famous got back into the news again after long after this case. A famous person, but we'll start where the case starts. So, if you're watching this with me, this case was called Dickey v. Alabama Board of Education and Troy State College, 1967. It was the first successful case for college press freedom. For college press freedom, but public college press freedom. On slide 2, you see the actual name of the case. It was the first court recognition of First Amendment rights of college journalists, and it happened right here at your university. 1967, so we're talking 53 years ago, long time ago. Here's the story. In 1967, Gary Dickey, I'm going to need a Kleenex here, who was a junior and an outstanding student, was one of the editors of the Tripolitan, the campus newspaper of Troy State College in Troy, Alabama. Now, of course, we still have a Tripolitan. You might even want to become involved in the Trop, so I'll throw in a good word here. It's great journalistic practice for you. So what happened to poor Gary Dickey while he was editor of the Trop? He wrote an editorial critical of Alabama's governor and state legislature. The problem? Troy State had a policy of prohibiting student editorials critical of state officials. Does this ring a bell? Did I teach you anything about a state that had a statute that prohibited journalists from writing bad things about elected officials? Yes, that was the first case that I discussed with you. It was Near v. Minnesota, and Minnesota had a very similar statute, which, if you recall, was struck down. But somehow, years later, Alabama developed such a statute, but it had never been tested. They shouldn't have had such a statute because of Near v. Minnesota, but they did. So what happened? Well, Dickey's editorial was one that supported Dr. Rose, who at the time was president of the University of Alabama. He had come out publicly on behalf of Alabama's student journalists' freedom of the press. The students had published excerpts of speeches of some of the most controversial figures in politics at the time, such as Bettina Aptheker, a communist, and Stokely Carmichael, an advocate of violent revolution. Keep in mind, this was the 60s. There was a lot of protesting on campuses, a lot of rising up, and students wanting rights that they deserved. But here they were, for the first time, standing up for those rights. So this is what was going on at the University of Alabama, and Dickey said, you know, I have to support Dr. Rose. So Dr. Rose became the target of nasty and severe criticism by members of the state's legislature. Newspapers across the state of Alabama covered this story widely, bringing it to the attention of most of the state's citizens. And if you wish to look into this further, You can go ahead and I don't think we have archived the trop all the way back. We might have one copy of that newspaper, or you might have to find it online. But you could go back and look at newspaper articles and see who had written about this in 1967. Dickey was moved. I don't mean physically moved. He was emotionally moved to write an editorial in support of Dr. Rose's efforts and views. Upon completing it, he gave it to his faculty advisor for review. Back in those days, you wrote an article and you gave it to your faculty advisor for approval. His advisor suggested that he not run it. We're going to hear about some other stories of college and high school journalists who got into some trouble along the way, but good trouble. We've heard a lot about good trouble lately, and from another Troy person. At any rate, so he was told that he probably shouldn't run the article. Dickey then took his article to the head of the college's English department, who approved of the editorial. However, his faculty advisor once again informed him that he would not be able to publish the editorial. At this point, Dickey took his editorial straight to the top, to the college's president, Ralph Adams. Now, Ralph Adams ruled with an iron fist. What Ralph Adams said went, okay? At this point, Dickey took it to Ralph Adams. Adams concurred with Dickey's advisor, telling him, you can't run this editorial. Dickey must not publish the editorial because of the school's policy called Adams' Rule. It was something like whatever Adams says goes. You know, he has the last say. So now he has been told not to run it. From the case document, here is a quote. Quote, the faculty advisor furnished substitute material concerning, now here's a real topic of interest amongst Alabama students, raising dogs in North Carolina, to be published in lieu of Dickey's proposed editorial. Upon being furnished the editorial on the North Carolina dogs, Dickey, as editor of the Tripolitan, determined that it was not suitable, and acting against the specific instructions of his faculty advisor and the president of the college, arranged to have, with the exception of the title, A Lament for Dr. Rose, the space ordinarily occupied by the editorial left blank, with the word censored diagonally across the blank space. I'm going to pause here, and the second video will have the conclusion of this story.